Good morning, you're watching Sunrise. Time for our talking point this morning. Should NHS hospitals encourage vaping? Shops selling e-cigarettes have opened at 2 hospitals in the West Midlands, while cigarette smokers are fined £50 for lighting up on the grounds. So, should hospitals be encouraging patients and visitors to vape? With us in the studio is Andrej Kuttruf, Chief Executive of Vape, and Deborah Arnott of Action on Smoking joins us down the line. Welcome to you both. If I can turn to you first, Andrej, is it a good idea to have people vaping on hospital premises, visitors and patients, people that aren't well?
Yes, absolutely. I think it's great news that the GPs in those hospitals have recognized the massive public health prize vaping has to offer to smokers. Vaping is 95% less harmful than smoking, according to Public Health England, and I think it's a tremendous opportunity to bring vaping products into the hands of those patients.
But not completely harmless, though?
No, it's 95% less harmful, so it's a way less harmful alternative to smokers, and that's really great for those patients to switch over to vaping.
Deborah, what's your initial reaction to vaping shops opening up on NHS sites?
Well, I think it's really important to encourage all smokers to quit. And even if you're already sick, as most people in hospital are, you can improve your quality and length of life by quitting smoking. Even, for example, if you've got lung cancer. But it can be difficult to switch, so I think it's a positive thing. I mean, I was going in to visit my dad in hospital the other day, and there was a woman sat outside smoking with a drip, and she'd obviously had operations on her feet and had vascular problems. And I went up to her and said, look, you do realise the best thing you can do for your health is to quit. And she said, well, I've tried. And I said, have you tried e-cigarettes if you can't quit completely? And she said, I've tried, but I find it difficult. Well, if there's a vape shop on the premises, that means you can get help and advice in finding the right device, because we want all smokers to quit. That's the main thing. And while quitting completely and rather than switching to vaping is the best alternative, if you can't quit, if you're heavily addicted to nicotine, then vaping is better.
So you do say that really people should be encouraged to quit completely as the first alternative?
I think that's best. I mean, it's best for your pocket, because you're not spending money on things you don't need. And it's also the best thing for your health, because although it's very much less harmful, as you said, it's not risk-free. But on the other hand, we know that it's very difficult for smokers to quit, and many smokers relapse. And we know that e-cigarettes are almost entirely being used by smokers to help them quit smoking, or ex-smokers to prevent them from relapsing back to smoking.
Andrej, doesn't this potentially send the wrong message? And I'm just thinking of a friend of mine who was a smoker, a regular smoker. He doesn't smoke anymore, but vapes a lot. And he actually vapes more than he actually smoked, because first thing in the morning, he'll get up and the vapor stick, or whatever you call it, will be right next to him. And it'll be the same thing just before he goes to bed. And as you say, 95%, less damaging to your health, but there is that 5% that is damaging to your health. It's nicotine. It's not really curing that addiction to nicotine.
Well, nicotine is not as bad as its perception. It's similar to coffee and it's addictive. But the real harmful thing about cigarettes are really the combustion of tobacco. And vaping is completely sidestepping that issue, because it's similar to water vapor. So there's no combustion, and that makes it so much less harmful than smoking.
But you can't say that nicotine is as bad as caffeine.
As bad as caffeine, well, nicotine is an addictive substance, but the real problem with smoking is the combustion, and I think that's the message which needs to get out there.
Deborah, what sort of message, though, do you think it does send when we see vaping shops on NHS sites at hospitals?
I think it sends the right message, which is that this is much less harmful than smoking. And part of the problem is we know that something like 1/3 of all smokers who are having difficulty quitting, and remember the vast majority of smokers want to quit, haven't tried vaping. And part of the reason for that is misperceptions that it's as harmful or more harmful than smoking, and that's just wrong. And hospital sites, it's really important they go smoke-free. I don't know if you've had the experience, but going into casualty, often you find groups of people smoking round the entrance or into the main entrance of the hospital. That's really not good. The hospitals are not saying that you should vape everywhere, but they're saying you can't smoke, which is absolutely right, and there are penalties for being found smoking on the site, but you can vape, and that will ease the transition. We've seen this in prisons too. They ban smoking in prisons, but they allow prisoners to buy from the prison shops electronic cigarettes and vapes. So those who can't quit completely can switch to vaping, and I think that's completely appropriate.
But Deborah, why not just ban it all? I mean, there are some places where you're not allowed to smoke or vape, like if you go on an airplane, for example, you're not allowed to do either.
Yes, but that's not part of legislation, and I think it's perfectly appropriate for, on an airplane, you know, you wouldn't want people spraying perfume all around the airplane while you're on it. So it's perfectly appropriate. And the same is true, for example, this is Sky, but the BBC banned vaping indoors, and it made very clear it wasn't for health reasons, but for courtesy reasons, because you don't really want to be in an office where you're surrounded by electronic cigarette vapour. So I think that's appropriate, but not banning completely. And it's bizarre. I mean, San Francisco, for example, has banned vaping, but they're still allowing smoking, and cannabis is legal. I mean, that doesn't make any sense at all, because you talked about the harm of nicotine. The main harm of nicotine is that it has addicted generations of people to smoking, and it's the smoking that's harmful. Nicotine is actually, relatively speaking, it's quite a boring drug. It's not like alcohol, which makes people behave, you know, often causes domestic violence and things like that. And I've just lost my...
Yeah, at which point we'll bring Andrej in. Andrej, are you essentially saying that vaping is good for you?
I'm saying that vaping is the most way less harmful alternative to smoking.
And is it good for you then?
Vaping is good for the smokers to switch to, yes. And it has been proven as the most popular way to quit smoking. It has been proven as twice as effective as any other stop smoking therapy. And I think that shows the massive popularity vaping has experienced in the last few years.
Andrej and Deborah, thank you very much for speaking to us. You've got your earpiece back in just to hear the goodbye.
Thank you.
Goodbye.